Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the world's most watched professional wrestling news program. Welcome to the Pro Wrestling Report on Time Warner Cable. Damian Nelson sitting alongside the man they call Meathead and the Cos, Frank Cosentino, coming off the heels of Milwaukee hosting WWE Smackdown this past Tuesday. And its very own Bradley Center will talk about our thoughts of that live event experience from WWE. We're also going to talk about what Kurt Angle has to say about TNA. Additionally, we've got some information on Ric Flair getting into a little bit more trouble recently. However, this is not a huge story like everyone's making out to be, but it is worth talking about. And Mick Foley makes comments about what his involvement will be in TNA. Again, folks, this is the Pro Wrestling Report on Time Warner Cable. It's you. It's
what
you
did I do?
general.
I literally was just sitting here.
It's the Pro Wrestling Report on Time Warner Cable. Make sure you check out, if you haven't already, this past week's edition of the Pro Wrestling Report on 540 ESPN, featuring our special guest, Robert Conway, if you will. And we've just announced, obviously, we've got another guest coming up this Monday night on the Pro Wrestling Report radio show. And we'll tell you who that is at the bottom of this program here. But first, gentlemen, let's talk about Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle, obviously the big star in TNA, formerly of World Wrestling Entertainment. In a recent interview that he did with ESPN, he said TNA is got great wrestlers, should be focused on wrestling 101, and does too many gimmick matches. Kurt Angle talking about the Impact video game that was released this past Tuesday, also talking about the current status of the TNA wrestling organization compared to WWE, talks a little bit about his departure from WWE as well. Now, gentlemen, this is a statement that we evaluated a couple of weeks ago. We talked about TNA and WWE actually going forward with more of those gimmick-type matches. So, the question that's out there is, does TNA have too many gimmick matches, if there is such a thing, Frank?
No, I don't think so. As they continue to build their product, they're doing whatever they can to get people to talk about their product. That's what Kurt Angle's doing when he has these interviews. He mentions TNA, people talk about TNA. Now he's got an opinion on it, which is a little bit, normally you would talk about something positive about your organization. Here he has something that's not totally negative, but something that's his opinion on gimmick matches. I don't think I think it's fine, the amount.
And the spirit of the interview was fairly favorable to TNA, unlike, and that's one of the big differences between TNA and WWE. You look at a Carlito who has spoken out. You look at some of the other talents who spoke out against WWE, at least their thoughts of some of the way WWE were doing things. And if it was able to even get published, they were certainly put in a non-favorable status with the organization. Now you've got Kurt Angle, who, of course, is one of the top stars, if not the top star in TNA right now, in the situation where he does also have some negative things to say about his current organization. That's good to be able to at least speak out, even if there's potential damage to the company. But overall, the spirit of the interview was very positive. Meathead, your thoughts. TNA, too much or not enough gimmick matches?
Way too many gimmick matches. Every pay-per-view main event has some sort of gimmick attached to it. It's the 4 ways to get butt-naked match, or it's the, this is going to happen and this is going to happen. It's way too many. What happened to a match?
Don't forget the ladder of love.
I'm not done talking. What happened to a match?
Just giving you supporting
I'm still not done.
documentation.
What happened to a match that hasn't been built up? I mean, built up between one guy and another. Built all the way to an apex, which is the pay-per-view match. It's built up from show to show to show to show. That ends at a pay-per-view. What happened to that?
You can still do that with gimmick matches.
I understand that, but why do you have to have all those gimmicks? Why? You already have a gimmicky ring. You already have a gimmicky approach to what you do. I like TNA. I really do like TNA. But why? You are trying so hard. Just let your wrestling speak for itself.
What they're trying to do is find a gimmick match that's going to stick. When they started Royal Rumble years and years ago, they didn't think at that time that it would last this long.
There hasn't been another kennel match, dog kennel match.
Yeah.
Along that line, you're talking concepts. I mean, you always want to introduce new concepts.
Not enough?
In my opinion, it's fine. I mean, I would maybe lean towards there are too many, but what they're trying to do is find something that sticks. And then the fans keep talking about saying, you know what, that works. We can keep that one going, and then maybe we'll let go of that type of gimmick match as they're continuing to build their brand. So I'm leaning towards, yeah, there are too many, but I understand why they're doing it, because they're trying to be different. And that's, whether it's good or bad, we still have to evaluate, because technically, I don't know how many years they've been. Has it been 8 years?
2002, they've been around for about 6 years.
It's still in its infancy.
And they're still trying a new gimmick match every month.
Yeah. You're right. And they're just hoping for something to stick.
You've said it in the past, Frank, the six-sided ring. I've supported your statement that, is it a distraction or a benefit at this point in the lifespan of TNA and where they've been and what they're able to do?
That is a total distraction, which obviously I've talked about many times.
Does it have a negative impact on the product, though?
In my opinion, yes.
That's no pun in words, by the way.
In my opinion, yes, because
Play on words.
this is professional wrestling. It's not professional gimmick wrestling.
But in Mexico, six-sided ring is fairly standard.
This is in Mexico.
But
that is true.
But I would argue that the style of that wrestling, there's the luchadors. There's a lot more athleticism in it. Maybe it's not as many storylines involved in that type of wrestling. There's nothing wrong with that, but it is a different type of luchador type wrestling down there.
Yeah.
So that works. Up here, it doesn't. When you're building storylines, which Meathead is correct that there are too many as far as gimmicks, but the gimmick itself is the ring, and that's enough. But again, I don't have a problem with it because they're trying to get something to stick.
The six-sided ring, Meathead, your opinion, distraction or not really relevant in TNA?
I don't think it's relevant. Again, I'm not a fan of it, but I don't think it's relevant at all. I think the fact that you have the six-sided ring is just minor compared to all the other horseplay that's going on with the TNA product. I mean, as far as, again, and I hope to God that the Sanjay Dutt, Jay Lethal thing is over.
It's a ladder of love match.
Once again, not done talking. I hope that it's done. I hope that that's over with because a different gimmick added on to the story over and over and over and over. We've had enough.
Did we have enough in 1996 when they did it with Undertaker Mankind?
Absolutely, because nobody was watching it.
Beg to differ. Beg to differ.
All right. That was me trying to take a shot.
It was a boiler room brawl. It was a Hell in a Cell. I think they might have had a last man standing. I don't know. I mean, it was just... But
Inferno match probably too, even though that was,
But of course, that was a solidly built feud that people cared about.
Sure.
And within TNA, you have those, of course. Now they've had some pioneering things. Six Sides of Steel, which back to the six-sided ring thing, they can say it's going to be a steel cage match. But that's the same thing WWE can say and Ring of Honor can say. They now can say it's six sides of steel, which gives them a little bit more...
it's a marketing ploy.
Yeah, exactly. It gives them a little more of an opportunity to do that. So I see it from that fact, but they've got the King of the Mountain match. They've got the X Division type matches. They've done all these things that they have really been able to own as their organization.
Correct.
When you really look at the list of what TNA has innovated, if you will,
correct,
then there's quite the long list out there, and it's more than the six-sided. But the question... what do they need? Because as Kurt Angle said, they should be focusing on Wrestling 101, which they can do and have done. But they've got some challenges coming up. ECW is a little organization that might be able to do it.
It's not an organization at all. ECW is not an organization
I'm not done.
at all. Thank you. Good job.
The wrestling that you see on ECW is, at times, rivaling what you get on TNA. And TNA is, much like WWE may have been caught with their pants down, reference the Divas versus Knockouts. Pants down was a throw. This TNA's got a risk here of becoming, how dare I say, stagnant.
Are you done now? Because I didn't want to interrupt you there.
Frank?
You mentioned what they do, and that's make money. That's all they care about. That's you've got to make money to keep that product going. Now, what I'm interested in is when financially they're in trouble. Do they?
Who is they? TNA?
TNA. If they make some type of huge move, in this case, it could be, you know what? Let's get back to a regular four-sided ring and build the project over again with the talent that they have. That will only happen if they're financially in trouble.
Or Vince Russo and Eric Bischoff get together again on TV and start all over. Oh, wait, that happened in WCW already.
April 9, 2001, I believe, was the day.
Correct.
No, it wasn't 2001. It had to be 99.
Until then.
No, couldn't
went
have
out
been
of business in 2001.
Yeah.
Until
they're
then,
out of business?
This six-sided ring, it's not going to go anywhere.
WCW
We're interested to hear your thoughts, folks. You can interact with us several ways. The forum at pwrshow.com or you can send us your emails at comments@pwrshow.com. And also join us in the chat room live when we are with you again Monday night at 10 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on 540 ESPN. Let's move on and talk about Smackdown. Live in Milwaukee this past week at the Bradley Center.
Something else.
This is a show that just aired tonight for those of you watching us on Time Warner Cable. Your thoughts, gentlemen, on the overall show, and we'll start with you, Meathead.
Ooh.
Overall show, not just looking
I'm
at
talking about from the
what
moment
the
I walked,
wrestling was.
no, from when I walked in the door to the point when I walked out the door. Ugh. Yuck. There it is.
Frank.
It's an average show. It's you can just sense that JR is not happy there. Triple H is just kind of hanging around just because he's playing the company line. Yep, Vince, don't worry, I'll be on SmackDown and basically be the face of that. I mean, Undertaker, I guess, is there also, but it's just a product that we know that it's not. We saw it live, which makes it a little bit better. But there's that aspect of, okay, it's taped. They may have to edit that part out. There's something missing. I don't know what it is.
But here's
Star
the question.
power.
Here's the
That's
question.
what's missing.
Well, they got
Star.
two huge stars.
We've got several
Two
huge
ain't going to
stars.
do it.
Well,
Jeff Hardy,
Your top-
Triple
no,
H,
here-
I think
here's what's
MVP's a
missing.
top star,
No,
Undertaker's a top star, Big Show.
No. Here's what's missing. That top part of the card, who is it? Who's the top? MVP is not part of the top part of the card.
I think he is.
He's not. Kennedy, not part of the top part of the
'cause
card
he's
because
hurt.
he's out. Who else? I mean,
Jeff Hardy, The Undertaker. Big
Okay,
Show.
Jeff Hardy just got promoted. Finally. Who
but
else
you
is
saw
in
the-
that?
the
Who else
crowd
is in the
pop,
top
though.
card? Who else? And that's why he's up there. But who else is in the top part of the card? Triple H, Undertaker, Edge.
And who's on top on Raw?
Okay, there's a lot more than that. I mean, that's just 3 names.
I think the injuries to Edge and to Mr. Kennedy are hurting the product currently right now.
But Kennedy wouldn't be at the top part of the card anyway.
It could be. He had the money in the bank, which is usually your stepping
But that's
stone.
a year ago, Frank.
Yeah, but it's
But
your
as-
stepping stone. Look at Edge, how he took advantage
That's
of
all.
that.
That's a year and a half ago.
My
As
point
wrestling
is,
He was
fans,
on Raw when he had the money in the
as
bank.
wrestling
Or he went to
fans,
Raw afterwards.
did you have fun
No,
at the show?
absolutely
No
not.
fun. Frank, you
Oh, sure, I always have fun. I was sitting next to me.
Well, you're welcome.
I explained your
And
answer.
actually, you know what? I did have fun because even though Damien and Santa Claus were sitting down at the front of the show,
Which
I
I'm sure
peed.
you saw many times.
Yeah, I kept texting Damien back and forth, brands colliding, because the Colons were on the show. I mean,
The Colognes.
The Colognes.
Carlito's on SmackDown.
yeah, but not Primo. Primo was on Raw.
He hasn't been. He wasn't. He's just there. He can go wherever.
Exactly.
whichever brand he's
Brands colliding.
Here's the notes that are significant from that show. Is first off, I'm not sure I've been to a WWE televised event in this city that had a lower draw than this show did.
Unbelievable.
For SmackDown. We were there last October and in March I
For
think,
Halloween.
for Raw
March
and
for
SmackDown
Raw.
respectively, and even on Halloween night, I think it was,
Yeah.
or somewhere around there, they drew a pretty decent crowd. This was probably about 5 or 6K, which is not anything to sneeze at, folks. I mean, I'm sure they probably made some money on the
But
thing
it
or
was
whatever,
only
but
one bowl. The upper half was empty.
completely tarped off, much like Unforgiven on Sunday night. So the question is, boys, WWE going into Cleveland, Ohio for their pay-per-view last Sunday, does it
Hello,
with
Cleveland.
seats available with gimmick matches, by the way, and then come to Milwaukee on Tuesday night with seats available, which is not a big deal because Milwaukee, for whatever reason, unless it's free, many of you don't ever want to participate, which is pretty frustrating, but
Which
whatever.
is where Damien's opinion of WCW always came in, because when WCW was here, he'd see half an empty building, and he's got to remember that Milwaukee doesn't pay for events.
There's a difference between half of an empty building and half of an empty building.
Two things. First, you have to say it. The economy is part of it. So your dollar is spent in other ways. Two, it's not a live event. I know it's a small part of it, but some people think it's
It's
not
a lot
live.
bigger than a smaller part, Frank.
But it's SmackDown.
It's a big deal.
Now, when was the last time SmackDown has been here? I mean,
was about a year ago.
Halloween, we just mentioned
was about a year ago.
Yeah, it was a year ago.
Was it SmackDown or was it Raw?
No.
Raw was
it
here in March, I
Halloween.
believe.
Raw was here right before we left for WrestleMania. SmackDown was here for ECW
then
because
they had- but-
we mentioned that we noticed one of the plants dressed in costume for the ECW show.
yeah.
But I think the point you're getting at is there hasn't been any shows in between. More broad-scale WWE-style wrestling shows in Milwaukee here.
I mean, Taboo Tuesday, which was here a couple of years ago.
Like 3 to 4 years
Well,
ago.
and Milwaukee can certainly sustain it. The AWA was huge here, obviously.
Sure.
WWE, I remember when the Bradley Center opened, their first event about a month later in the Bradley Center. And then they did every 3 months.
Yeah.
It was like clockwork. Every 3 months, WWE was here at the Bradley Center for years.
Be it a
it
house
was
show,
like that.
be it a
many of them would be close to selling out. I mean, it was a regular thing. And for a couple of years, they went over to the Mecca, which is probably a better venue for them at this point. But it's just I think it's blaring. Now Chicago, of course, where I was a couple of weeks ago for Raw, complete sellout. That's one of the staples. But Cleveland also has long been one of those cities WWE goes to, and there's no question they're selling the building out. And they couldn't even do that for a pay-per-view. I think, in addition to the economy, I think that this shows people aren't bought in to WWE right now.
Right. Yeah.
And there's a difference. Doesn't mean I don't like it. They're not bought in.
There's also a marketing aspect to it. Normally when a house show or a show comes to town, 2 months later, when tickets go on sale, there's a wrestler somewhere trying to promote it.
Well, Sheldon Benjamin did an appearance
the
September,
day of.
Yeah.
The day of.
Yeah, out at Mayfair Mall.
But how did you know?
We
They never said it. That's a very good point.
Right.
Unless you go to the website, know where to go.
Right.
They never said it. Hell, we didn't even say it.
No, we didn't say it because we couldn't confirm it.
Well, we're not helping WWE selling.
Right, and we don't work for WWE. Yeah.
TNA, ROH, different story.
Sure.
Yeah.
We don't work for them either. But again, WWE, as Damien will tell you, with their elitist attitude, maybe need to wake up a little.
The performers, as you said, Triple H, and there were some reports on the internet indicating what he did after the show, which of course many of them were all wrong. And was a young girl who got knocked down by Big Show and Taker, who we saw in a main event, house show main event, if you will, and then Triple H going over to her to console her and get her to stop crying. Which, again, folks, a lot of people don't give Triple H the credit he deserves for the performer that he is. Whether you like him, whether he wins all the time, whether he is in the family or whatever, as Jeff Hardy said, he is one. And it dawned on me at WrestleMania 22 in Chicago when he worked the crowd wherever he was. It was a week-long activity. Wherever he was, he worked that crowd better than any performer I had seen since probably Ric Flair in his heyday. And that was when I gained a ton of respect for Triple H. I still maintain that respect. But the point that needs to be made is Triple H was having a blast, in my opinion. He was working, he was doing great, having a blast, as was Matt Hardy, as was Jeff Hardy, I would say. Now, when you look at some of the other people involved, they clearly were just sort of going through the motions. A lot of the performers just sort of going through the motions, and most specifically, Jim Ross appeared to be just going through the motions. There was just no energy at this show.
Seemed Tony Schiavone-like.
No. He never fell asleep.
But he seemed Tony Schiavone-like.
That's an insult.
Do you think
It's an accurate assessment, is what it is.
Do you think, and I'm just maybe grasping at straws on this one, that the wrestlers on SmackDown think it's a demotion that they're not
Absolutely.
on Raw?
100%.
I think they think that, but
It's not a live show, so okay, I can mess up and don't worry about it.
show.
yeah, but we've made the point several times. As many people watch SmackDown as watch Raw.
But that's not the point.
It
That's
should
not
be
the
the point, though. What's the big deal?
It should
I
be,
mean,
but it's not.
Raw gets the focus because it's live. It's the premier show. Obviously, when you think WWE, what's the first thing come to mind? Two things, probably.
WrestleMania and Raw.
So
Absolutely.
you've got, this staple of a show that you got to protect. You got to protect the golden child, if you will. SmackDown, they've got. Remember, folks.
Want the knife?
Look at what they did with SmackDown. Putting JR over there, putting Triple H over there, putting Jeff Hardy over there, Kennedy, Edge. They've got so many great talents signed up and along the lines on SmackDown. The wrestlers, yes, I do believe many of them may feel they're on a B show, if you will. I mean, it's been rated there, or it's been called that for a number of years. But when you really look at the facts, they put as much into SmackDown as they do Raw.
But it doesn't
Resources.
matter. That's not how they feel. We're, making assumptions, of course. We're not in the heads of wrestlers. I mean,
Of course, they're looking at the bottom line. It's making money, that's fine. But they're also looking at fan reaction.
No. Making money is great for the wrestlers. But
No, the organization is.
I'm talking about we're still talking about the wrestlers. Making money is great for the wrestlers, but it's a stigma. Would you rather be, let's just relate it to sports. Would you rather be Would you rather be the number one player on a team getting paid tons of money, but you're on a losing team every year? No, you want to win. You want to be in a winning environment. A performer wants to perform in a winning environment. So, you know, granted, you're on SmackDown and the, you know, money is being put into the show, but if it's still considered the B show, where's the energy?
Well, the energy,
where's the energy?
The energy comes from right after January when, okay, WrestleMania is coming up.
Sure.
We know that we could be on WrestleMania.
Sure.
Much like Edge and Undertaker headlined WrestleMania this past year.
That, I think, is the only motivation that keeps them going. I better perform well so I get noticed. The crowd reacts, whether I'm heel or face, and I can get on WrestleMania where there's an extra payday.
It's not even about the payday so much as about being on the show.
Right.
The show.
That
playing in the playoffs. Making it to the World Series.
We saw the return of Carlito, who is looking better than I think he has since we've seen him in WWE. Seems to have lost a little bit of weight and has grown a lot of bit of hair. So it's good to see him and his brother,
He's one of the Colons,
or
right?
cousin, come back and they're formed a tag team on SmackDown.
The Colones.
So SmackDown was live. We've got I'll be at Impact next week. And then obviously Bound for Glory in October in the Chicago area. We'll be at that show again. And you know, we talked about the comparison between a TNA and a WWE live event. You know, I had a blast Tuesday night, by the way, at the SmackDown taping. It was a great night, and it's always fun. And as true fans, I think no matter the show, how bad it is or how horrible it is, you still have fun and you enjoy it. And you still go and you still, you know, you pick on it and say whether it was good, bad, or not even to be remembered. But you still have fun, and I think we had fun on Tuesday night. We'll have fun at the upcoming shows as well.
I had a ton of fun the entire night, but the show, honestly, from walking in the door to walking out the door,
it was average.
Average isn't a very, very close assessment of how I felt. The pretzel was hard. The show was awful.
Mick Foley has made a public statement. He was recently on an ESPN program down in Florida, I believe, and talked about his deal with TNA Wrestling. Said that it is a short-term deal, which, by the way, in case you don't know, he did make an appearance at a house show in New York just about a week ago for TNA. Nothing real big or of note happened. However, Mick Foley coming out and saying hello to all the fans there at that show. Well,
hello, Long Island!
Well, he did say his deal with TNA is a short-term deal. Now, that could mean a year, it could mean 3 months, it could mean 2 appearances. We don't know what that means specifically. What he also says is he does not expect to be wrestling immediately. 2 things are up in the air. When and if Mick Foley decides to wrestle with TNA, he said it's got to be the right situation and would make some sense, and how much longer he stays or extends his stay in TNA Wrestling, which is the point by which we will speculate, gentlemen. Mick Foley is coming to TNA. That's no doubt going to happen, and we think it'll probably happen at Bound for Glory, as that makes some sense, maybe a week or 2 before. And as you saw last night on Impact, Jeff Jarrett making his return to the Impact Zone. So lots of momentum going into Bound for Glory. You keep doing that. That's his old music.
I know. Chosen One.
That's his old music. When he was in... So
is that
Frank,
the new music now?
Mick Foley, short-term deal in TNA Wrestling, says he's not going to wrestle right away. What do you think we're going to see?
Well, it all depends on who contacted who. If Kurt Angle contacted TNA, then TNA had the leverage. If Mick Foley was contacted by TNA, then Mick Foley has the leverage.
Well, remember, in 2005, Mick was very close. He had a verbal agreement with TNA before going back to WWE.
In my opinion, it was TNA that contacted Mick Foley. And in that case, I think this is maybe a 6-month thing. Again, it's just a guess on my part. When their main event, Bound for Glory, comes around, maybe he has some involvement in that. But I think it's just a short-term deal. See if they get a little bump in the ratings. If they don't, thanks a lot, Mick. We gave it a shot. But
can they afford to do that? You look at the Randy Savages, the Rikishis of the world that were in TNA for
about a minute.
And, you know, fans like, oh, this is cool. Oh. You know, Hogan was coming in. They went to hit him with a guitar. It was the only time he appeared. You know, can they run that risk, Frank?
Yeah, they can if in sports.
This isn't sports.
No.
Yeah.
In sports, sometimes you get like a running back, like an older running back will say, we'll get a contract. If you get this many yards, you'll get this.
Incentive laden.
So
they do that in the NFL?
Yeah. In the NFL, they do. They can.
They did it before
like
that crap.
They
did it before that.
They stole that from the XFL
no,
too. Just like they stole the overhead camera.
No, it's the Damian this
one. Oh,
one.
you go ahead. Look at these two. Just shut down, crawling back into the little shows. Look at me having a show. Look at me. Because you know it's right. They stole that from the XFL. You can admit it.
You were so obviously
that is.
They stole it.
You were so obviously.
How long have they been doing it?
Can I
since like 1975.
Since the free
Who can prove
agents
it?
I can absolutely prove it to you.
Let
But anyway,
Frank finish.
But my point is, maybe there has
Jackass.
something to do with, Mick, we're going to get you a new T-shirt. If you could sell an X amount of that, you'll get this. There's some kind of incentive in it, in my opinion. If the TNA contacted Mick Foley. If it's the other way around, then TNA said, well, Mick, we're going to need you to stay for 1 year. We're going to pay you this amount, take it or leave it. So it depends on who's in control.
That's not the case at all.
So
I
I
think
think
it's
that's
a
the other way
mutual agreement.
But does he replace a Sting who many report might be on his way out of TNA? We
No.
will not substantiate that
No.
claim, by the way. But
No.
do you swap out a Mick Foley for Sting? Because
No.
remember, Sting
These
came
aren't
in in
fantasy
05.
players. These aren't chess pieces.
No, but if TNA were forced into that situation, is that a smart move for them to do? Because remember, it was Mick Foley.
They're not forced in that situation, so I'm not even going to hypothesize.
Frank, it was Mick Foley who was originally going to come in before the deal was signed with Sting. So now we see a reverse of that situation where Sting might be on his way out of TNA.
But I
and
think
you
the
got
match
Mick
should
Foley
be,
who might be
you
coming
know what?
in.
Oh, ding. I just had an idea. I visited the Idea store down in Schaumburg. I mean, IKEA, excuse me. Idea store. Foley Sting. When have we seen that? Probably never.
Cactus
I don't
Jack,
think so.
which he still owns. The only thing he can't use is Mankind, by the way, in TNA.
Well, they already got what's his name. That's kind of a...
So what about Dude Love?
Well, no, Abyss is getting away from the hardcore stuff now. So he says maybe Foley comes in, challenges Abyss to really
a Monsters Ball? No.
prove his hardcore
No.
superiority.
That's
I don't
too
think
easy.
But we got to remember,
No.
Mick has always said,
That he's got a
Well,
family.
their
got a
early
family,
promotion.
he's not gonna
Yeah, he's
do
not
that.
going to
The
get.
man's got a
He's not
family.
going to get thrown 20 feet off the top of the 6 sides of steel. But the promotional
That'll be their new
material
gimmick.
that TNA has teased Mick Foley's arrival with, barbed wire and blood.
No.
I'm just saying.
I think we need to move it on. That's just me. Mick Foley will show up at Bound for Glory, or maybe a week
Thank you
before.
for your input. That was fairly insignificant.
My
Ric
input before
Flair.
before I got interrupted by your XFL crap line was significant.
Did the NFL, yes or no? Yes or no? Frank, did the NFL take some aspects of the XFL and utilize them in their...
one, the camera.
Zero,
a
because
yes
that
or
camera
no
was
question?
already in production.
It's a yes
It
or
was
no
new.
question.
You know,
Frank.
you asked some. I'm telling you, it was one.
I said no.
No, the camera.
No, that
worked.
it was already in production. They had already done stuff like that.
I think that
It's such
XFL had that.
Damien is
but that's
hanging
about
on
it.
this tiny ass string just to try to irritate.
WCW is a defunct wrestling organization that
See
went
what
out
I'm
of
saying?
business in
We were
2001
doing
when
a
it was
professional
purchased by
broadcast until he
Vince
got a boner
McMahon.
over XFL.
Well, you sit here every week and talk about, oh, WCW, it was so great.
It was.
It was more of a horrible demise
Here,
than the
here.
XFL ever
I'm
was. The XFL was a
WCW.
flash in the
Ain't I
pan.
great?
WCW was around since 1905. And
No, they
you go
weren't.
ahead, essentially, lineage dates back to 1905. And it goes away, and oh, yeah, I'm hanging on to the XFL. You remind me of an asshole. Ric Flair is in trouble, ladies and gentlemen. Apparently, what? Apparently,
I
gets
think it's the first time you ever said that.
gets into a brawl, if you will, with his daughter's boyfriend.
On her dad's side.
Yes, at a hotel complex just north of Raleigh, North Carolina. Now, the police were called to the scene, and once they got
think I
there,
stayed there
nothing
once.
was going on. They followed the trail of blood to the hotel of the Ric Flair's daughter, found Ric Flair sleeping in the apartment along with the, well, let me back that up. Ric Flair was sleeping in one bedroom in the apartment. The young man who was the boyfriend was sleeping in another location. The girl was there. Apparently, she got combative with the police and was arrested for assault on a police officer. Some pictures have surfaced of Ric Flair with a bloodied eye, or blackened eye, and a bloodied face from this incident. Now,
Beat up Ric Flair?
let's remember, Ric Flair is no stranger to the police.
Has he ever been arrested and gotten out of his car in his robe and going, woo?
I think we saw Edge do that once.
Yeah, we have.
Smooth. But gentlemen, your thoughts. I mean, Jim Ross has come out publicly and said the problem that Rick may have now is Rick needs somebody with Rick to control Rick. Now, we can't speak to that. This is a public statement made by Jim Ross. We see he's gotten in trouble now. He got in trouble between his WWE and WCW days as well. This is certainly a blemish on the legend that is Ric Flair.
Well, he thought maybe his wife could, kind of be Rick.
I do believe they got divorced.
Again?
I
Or a new one?
I do believe seeing recent reports indicating there might have been problems with that marriage. Don't quote me, folks. We'll get the interns.
Because you kind of figure, you're
Harley. We'll get Harley on it. We have a new intern. You missed
yes,
out. Harley. Sorry.
Yeah, that's what if that was what happened, then it's unfortunate that his wife wasn't, or ex-wife or someone. Maybe it's the friends around the wrestling area that he needs. You remember one point, going back to sports, and Darryl Strawberry.
Sure. I know him. He played baseball.
Yes. Darryl Strawberry got into a lot of trouble, and he needed baseball. He needed to be around baseball people. Once he wasn't around it, he got in trouble. Now, he changed his life around. But Ric Flair, I mean, there's no room for him in WWE as far as being in the ring.
Oh, remember? Yeah.
But, I mean, there's probably, if he would want to come back in some capacity.
He would need someone to be a road agent for him.
Yeah.
Or a producer,
It's unfortunate, because hopefully the guy saved his money and he's well off there. But.
He always gets back on his own 2 feet and is able to make it out of it. So, like I said, this story I think is being made.
You know what I really don't want to see happen to Ric Flair is what happened to Hasselhoff. I don't want to see a video of him laying naked eating a cheeseburger. That's what I don't want to see, because I think that might be where Ric Flair is heading down, that road.
The core of this story is truly anything that could happen to any family in America.
Absolutely.
Some kind of dispute.
Matter of fact, if you say if it's outside of Raleigh, I assume it's where I spent my 4 months when I lived in North Carolina, and I had an issue at that hotel too.
It seems as if, since he is a celebrity, that of course this story got made bigger than it would be. It probably happened 3 times since we've been talking about it right here in Milwaukee. But anyways, worth reporting because it is wrestling related. What is also wrestling related is coming up this Sunday night on pay-per-view. TNA presents their pay-per-view offering, No Surrender. It's coming to you from Oshawa, Ontario, Canada.
You said it way too fast.
We are in OT right now.
Way too fast.
The big matchup is for the World Championship. It is a 4 Ways to Glory match. It's going to be Samoa Joe defending against Booker T versus Kurt Angle versus Christian Cage. Now, this really is nothing more than a 4-way match, but I don't mind. I don't think it's a gimmick to put a fancy little name behind it. It is not a Ladder of Love match. Let me confirm that's what it's called.
It's called
Ladder of Love match, yes. Your thoughts on that big main event matchup? Samoa Joe, we come off the scrambles last weekend from WWE. We go into a situation now where the TNA World Champion could also lose his title without losing his title.
Yeah, that could possibly happen. We speculated how long Samoa Joe would have this title. And I don't know exactly how many months it's been, but it's been at least 6.
It's been about a minute.
So in this type of match, if he were to lose, and if he doesn't get pinned, then it makes sense. But if he were to lose and gets pinned, in my opinion, the Samoa Joe era is done with TNA, which is a shame because he's a good talent. But I think I'm looking forward to it. It should be a decent match.
I recently engaged a member of the forum on this topic.
Recently got engaged?
Wow, where's the cigars?
On this topic. Huh? And the topic was Samoa Joe a mistake to go a champion? And it was like, look at how big, everybody wanted it. Everybody wanted Samoa Joe. Everybody said, TNA's crappy because they're not putting the belt on Joe. Mm-hmm. They're not putting the belt on Joe. They're not putting the belt on Joe. They put the belt on Joe. Nothing really happens. I mean, Joe is a great champion. Let me preface this with that. Joe is a great champion, and I completely support Joe being the World Heavyweight Champion. He is credible in that role. But all the people that wanted Joe to be champion so bad, now what is AJ should be champion is what people are moving on to. Fans are sometimes never satisfied, but...
Sometimes never satisfied? Are you kidding?
So I read that in, I think it was Ronald Reagan's book. He wrote one, didn't he? But anyways, Samoa Joe losing that title, if you say, Frank, if he does get pinned, he loses credibility. Look who he's in there with, though. Booker T, Kurt Angle, and Christian Cage. Any one of those people, yeah. Any one of them could walk out of that match with the championship. Remember, though, as we talked about this past week on 540 ESPN, Sting, Mick Foley, Jeff Jarrett, Kevin Nash, 4 variables in this single match.
It should be an exciting match, and if Samoa Joe comes out of this still as champion, I think they'll keep it on for another.
I think
3
Joe
months.
loses the belt and goes to Bound for Glory against Kevin Nash.
Ooh,
yeah, that could very well happen.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it'll be a WrestleMania 9 kind of thing.
Maybe.
The other big match on that card, in our opinion, P.D. Williams going up against
In our
Consequences
opinion.
Creed.
Apollo Creed?
Well, anytime you've got the man with the single greatest finishing maneuver in the history
You said
of professional
our, like
wrestling.
you consulted me on that.
Well, I didn't. When I look at your notes here in the script.
I want to talk about...
Look at, folks, you want to see how this works? There's 2 blanks on this page. There's one for what I bring, and then there's one for Meathead, and there's one for Frank. But Frank was otherwise detained before coming to the show this evening.
I want to talk about Curryman on the pay-per-view. Curryman is going to be on the
Konnichiwa! That is actually great.
It's
He's been absent.
Konnichiwa!
I'm not Asian. I don't know. That is significant, him being away for quite a while. Now, speaking of being away, we won't be away too long because coming up this Monday night, we're going to have a full review of TNA's No Surrender pay-per-view as we begin the road from Adam from Oshawa, Ontario, Canada, as we begin the road to Bound for Glory coming up on October 12th from the Sears Center, suburban Chicago, Illinois. We will be on at 10 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can join us on pwrshow.com. And joining us this week, special guest Sylvain Grenier, the other half of La Resistance, joining Rob Conway, who joined us last week. The core 2 members.
Okay.
Of La Resistance.
Okay.
Sylvain Grenier, so get those questions ready for Sylvain, who is still working with several wrestling organizations, including the National Wrestling Organization, doing commentary. We'll get more into that on this week's show, so make sure you tune in and also check out all that we have to offer at revised headlines area at pwrshow.com, and many more superstar interviews to come as our star-studded September continues. Thank you so much for tuning in with us here on Time Warner Cable and pwrshow.com. For the man they call Meathead and Frank Cosentino, this is Damian Elson saying we'll see you Monday night on 540 ESPN Radio.